Observe the curve of the glass. It is seamless, almost invisible, yet it creates an impenetrable barrier between the viewer and the subjects within. We are standing on a darkened street corner in Greenwich Village, gazing into a fishbowl of fluorescent luminescence. This is Nighthawks, Edwardhopper's most recognizable masterpiece. But to call it merely a painting of a diner is to miss the profound psychological architecture that holds the composition together. Notice how the light doesn't just illuminate the scene, it spills out onto the sidewalk in a geometric wash of sickly pale yellow, cutting through the encroaching darkness of the sleeping city. It is a theatrical, artificial brilliance that exposes the figures inside, stripping them of their privacy, leaving them vulnerable to our voyeuristic gaze. Hopper's brushwork here is deceptively precise, almost architectural in its execution. He defines the sharp angles of the diner's exterior with a clinical exactitude, contrasting the rigid geometry of the cherry wood counter and the metal coffee urns with the softer, slightly slumped postures of the patrons. The palette is a masterclass in mood regulation. Deep, bruised greens of the window frames and the shadows outside clash quietly with the muted yellows and stark, visceral reds of the brick facade across the street. These colors do not sing. They hum with a low-frequency tension, creating an atmosphere of uneasy stillness that feels suspended in time. The scene is devoid of debris, devoid of the chaos of urban life. It is a sanitized, silent vacuum where sound seems to have been sucked away. We must understand the historical air Hopper was breathing when he laid these pigments to canvas. It was 1942. The United States had just entered World War II, following the attack on Pearl Harbor. New York City was beginning to practice blackout drills, dimming its lights against the threat of enemy bombers. Yet here, Hopper paints a beacon of defiant, perhaps desperate brightness. The painting subtly mirrors a collective subconscious permeated by vulnerability and an undefined dread. These four figures, the couple whose hands almost touch but don't, the solitary man with his back to us, and the busboy Pock in a moment of rote service, are not merely customers, they are archetypes of a society bracing for the unknown. They sit together in this illuminated sanctuary, yet they are profoundly alone. Philosophically, Nighthawks decodes the central paradox of the modern urban experience, the crushing proximity of millions of people that somehow results in a deeper, more resonant isolation. Hopper constructs a space that amplifies individual solitude rather than curing it. Perhaps the most chilling detail, one that often escapes the casual glance, is the absence of a door. Look closely. There is no visible entrance or exit for us, the viewers. We are hermetically sealed out, forced to remain perpetual outsiders observing a tableau of alienation. The diner becomes a stage where the play has no dialogue, only the silent, heavy weight of existence. It is a proximity without connection, a shared space where the silence is loud enough to deafen. In this way, Hopper transforms a simple late-night eatery into a cathedral of modern loneliness, beautiful in its desolation. Hopper's genius is not found in what he puts into a frame, but often in what he leaves out. He possesses a singular ability to imbue empty spaces and the most mundane architectural settings with a crushing psychological weight. His technique is characterized by a precise, almost clinical rendering of forms, yet these forms are always subservient to the tyranny of light. Whether it is the harsh, revealing morning sun or the eerie, greenish glow of an artificial bulb, light in a Hopper painting is never just a physical property, it is an emotional intruder. It acts as both an illuminator of the physical world and a metaphor for the exposure of the human soul. Consider early Sunday morning. At first glance, it is a simple depiction of a storefront on 7th Avenue, but look at the long, stretching shadows. Feel the silence of the street before the city wakes. The repetition of the windows above the shops creates a rhythm of monotony, a visual cadence of the ordinary. Yet the sunlight striking the red brick facade is visceral, almost hot to the touch. It creates a stark contrast with the dark, gaping voids of the shop windows, eyes that see nothing. This is the architecture of emptiness. Hopper strips the scene of human life to focus on the presence of the buildings themselves, which seem to wait with bated breath. The light here suggests a vulnerability. The buildings are naked under the sun, just as his figures are often naked in their hotel rooms, exposed to the indifferent gaze of the morning. Move then to the claustrophobic tension of office at night. Here, the light source is artificial, casting sharp, dramatic shadows that distort the room. The angle is elevated, as if we are spying from a security camera or a transom window. The relationship between the man at the desk and the woman at the filing cabinet is thick with unspoken narrative. Is it professional? Is it illicit? Hopper refuses to tell us. Instead, he uses the architecture of the room, the rigid lines of the desk, the open window with the shade blowing in, to manifest the psychological distance between them. The wind entering the room hints at a world outside, a freedom that these figures, trapped in their roles and their electric light, cannot access. Historically, this vision emerged from a post-World War I America that was rapidly industrializing. The rise of the anonymous city, with its skyscrapers and mass transit, was reshaping the human experience. Hopper, a man who detested the chaos of the modern world, retreated into these constructed silences. He meticulously built his scenes, often synthesizing sketches from multiple real-world locations, to create a psychological composite rather than a faithful reproduction. He wasn't painting a specific street. He was painting the feeling of a street. The philosophical weight is undeniable. Hopper explores the interior landscape of the individual. He reveals a quiet desperation, a contemplative solitude that speaks to the existential condition of modern existence. His figures are often isolated, even when they are in pairs, their gazes missing each other, fixed on a piece of paper or a spot on the floor, suggesting a fundamental, unbridgeable disconnect that architecture and light only serve to highlight. Edward Hopper's meticulous exploration of urban loneliness has left a scar on the face of modern culture, a beautiful, indelible mark it continues to define how we see ourselves. His influence extends far beyond the canvas, permeating the visual language of the 20th and 21st centuries. When we look at the moody, high-contrast lighting of classic film noir, we are seeing through Hopper's eyes. Directors like Alfred Hitchcock and Wim Wenders did not just admire Hopper, they quoted him. The Bates Motel in Psycho is a direct architectural descendant of Hopper's House by the Railroad. The voyeuristic framing of Rear Window is essentially a Hopper painting brought to kinetic life. His cinematic quality, the dramatic lighting, the frozen narratives, the carefully staged figures, anticipated the visual storytelling of cinema, proving that a single static image could hold as much suspense as a moving reel. But why does this mid-century painter resonate so painfully, so accurately today? We live in an era defined by hyperconnectivity. We carry the world in our pockets, yet the rates of reported loneliness are skyrocketing. Hopper prophesied this. He understood that the mechanics of modern life, the trains, the automats, the offices, and now, by extension, our digital interfaces, often serve to isolate us rather than unite us. His art remains a profound philosophical inquiry into this condition. When we see the woman in Automat staring into her coffee, we do not just see a woman in 1927. We see ourselves scrolling through a feed in a crowded room, physically present but mentally adrift. We recognize that specific flavor of hollow silence. Hopper's work is a mirror. It reflects our own moments of quiet contemplation and alienation. It validates the feeling of being alone in a crowd, transforming that shame into something dignified, something aesthetically significant. He teaches us that there is a somber beauty in these moments of disconnection. His legacy is not just in the technique of painting sunlight on a wall, but in the permission he gives the viewer to sit with their own solitude. He reminds us that true connection often begins with an understanding of our own isolation. In a world that demands constant engagement, noise, and performance, Hopper's figures refuse to perform. They simply are. They wait. They think. They exist in the amber of their own private thoughts. This is why his work is timeless. As long as there are cities, and as long as there are lights turning on in high-rise windows at dusk, there will be Hopper's world. He captured the unseen anguish of the modern soul, and in doing so, he made us feel a little less alone in our loneliness. His art is a silent companion, a testament to the enduring, universal reality of the human condition in the modern age.